Hi, Jimmy here, and this is the second part of my series that I'm doing about my new 17th century costume, because getting back into 17th century reenactment is really helping me re-find the joy in the sewing side of reenactment that I'd kind of got. 17th century reenactment is really helping me re-find that joy in sewing that I kind of lost for a little while there, and the first and probably the biggest thing that I had to face coming into this was making my own breeches, so that's what this is about. So this is the first pair of breeches that I've ever made, and well, no, it's not actually. This is the second pair of breeches, technically. I think the third. No, wait, this is the third. This is the third pair of breeches that I've made. I made a velvet pair for Regency stuff. I've made a pair of petticoat breeches, and I have now made these. And these are probably the best ones because these are the ones that I took the most time over and the ones that I put the most effort into getting right. And the process is relatively straightforward. The main source books that I used were the Victoria and Albert Museum's 17th century men's clothing patterns and Nora Waugh's The Cut of Men's Clothes 1600 to 1900, which has a really nice 1630s pair of breeches. And I basically took the pattern off them and then modified them a bit, with help from people like Isabel Northwood Costuming. The process for making these breeches started with something that I never ever do, which is making a mock-up and making the pattern. The pattern, basically, I took directly from Nora Waugh's book, which is great, and then I made a mock-up in factory cotton. Now, I never make mock-ups, which is probably why half the stuff I make doesn't fit properly or looks half-finished, but this was fairly important to get right because there's a waistband and there are specific widths and lengths of things I have to fit. So first step is to cut out the mock-up from just a nice, like, cheap cotton that I got from a local kind of everything shop that had a haberdashery apartment. Department. You can't live there. They won't let you. So following cutting this out, the next step that I didn't really ever do before this project is ironing the pattern, and ironing this mock-up helped a lot because the cotton shrank and I didn't realise that this was a thing. That's how good I am at this. But after I'd ironed it, the mock-up itself shrank so that every 8 inches had basically compressed by about 1.5 inches. So it was really worth doing because obviously that skews all of your measurements. So after I'd ironed the mock-up, I then redrew the pattern on the mock-up to see how close it was to where it needed to be. And it was far enough that it needed remarking, so iron your mock-up fabric. So the mock-up was then ready to be properly cut out to the correct sizes and dimensions and then sewn together so that there could be a test fitting. And again, test fittings are things I don't do enough of, and this really was an absolutely essential part of making these things because, oh my goodness me, do I now know more about things like seat rises and crotch piecing and pleating and linings than I knew before. Oh my goodness, it was such an education. But both of the pieces of the legs fitted okay. I lined them up, I marked them, they looked fine, so I went ahead and I sewed them up, and they looked like this. And they look pretty darn good. They fit, they're comfy. As you can see, I have a full range of movement in them. The waistband fits really nicely, and the only problem with them was that they were a little bit too wide and a little bit too puffy, as I will explain in my perfect early modern English impression.
Ich bought some fine cloth, wool stuff, for make me breeches. Bought me breeches to weed and to puffy. And so I have to fold the pattern.
So yeah, I basically had to fold the pattern a little bit. So instead of being that wide, it was that wide because the fabric that I had got, which I got from the same place I got these lovely pewter domed buttons, which was from the late, much missed Lindy Pickard of the Cloth Hall. Any British reenactors will probably know of Lindy. She'll be greatly missed, both as a source of information on fabrics and just as a really good person. But yeah, I had to fold the fabric. Well, no, I had to fold the pattern to fit the fabric, because the fabric was a foot wide. It was 30 centimeters wide, and that's not very wide at all. So, by carefully marking all of the pleat positions at the top of the fabric and carefully measuring and marking where it had been folded to, I was able to remake the mock-up, re-sew it together, make sure that it fit, and then check that it fit the fabric, which miraculously it did. I managed to get it to fit the fabric exactly as wide as I needed it to fit the fabric, and still have seam allowances left, which I need, and I need them to be big because I'm not very good at sewing. You'll notice, although the main bit of the legs fits, there are those little triangles, and those are the crotch bits. That's the crotch and like the bum, the fork, basically, where they meet in the middle, right? Trouser legs meet in the middle, that's where they are. So they had to be pieced. Piecing is period, and thanks to a buttload of measuring, it went really nicely. Like, look at that. There's no pulling, there's no bunching, it looks pretty symmetrical, it's nice and strong. I sewed it up with a nice strong backstitch, so it looks okay. Yeah, we got some legs. These breeches are great because, unlike my early medieval stuff, they have pocketses. I can put things in my pocketses. And the originals from the Victoria and Albert book have pockets in them. So I took the measurements from that, which I now regret. In future, I will take measurements from modern pants pockets because they are big enough for things like your phone, your house keys, your car keys, your bank card. And 17th century pockets ain't big enough for that. They are big enough for a little purse, and they're too small for a pickpocket's hands to get into. So, lesson learned. Also, by the way, these lovely trousers, a lot of people have asked me where I get them from, and I get them from a company called Elgar in Halifax, West Yorks, so check them out. So, I then went ahead and made the pockets, the waistband and the lining from some nice linen. The waistband is actually in a blue linen that I found and cut the waistband lining out of before I realised I had this nice white fine linen available. So that's why that's in a different colour. I didn't want to waste the fabric. The other thing that kind of went wrong with these breeches was the lining. I'm measuring out the linen and doing my best to get it the right size here, and I did make them kind of the right size. Tragically, after I'd then sewn the linen lining and waistband lining, I discovered that the lining was pulling on the outer fabric and making one of the legs about 4 inches shorter than the other. And on knee breeches, that's really, really noticeable. I mean, it'd be really noticeable on trousers as well. So what I did was I just slashed the lining and inserted a piece in here. So there's a fair bit of piecing, but lesson learned. Number 2, always triple check your lining fits properly and isn't pulling or bunching anything up and making things feel weird or look strange. Now the pleats are fairly important on this. A lot of breeches from the period have this pleating in them, and the lining for the pleats and the outer fabric are done basically as one piece, so the lining pleats where the pleats pleat. Ignore the hands and listen to the voice. And that's all then kind of clamped between the waistband and the waistband lining. And the pleating, I measured it as best I could to try and get it symmetrical and not too bulky, and I had some help with that, and that was okay. But the pleating into the knee bands is different to the pleating at the top because there's a bit of tapering at the leg, so that takes some finagling, that takes some finessing. But again, mock-ups, trial fittings, time, patience, all these things that I don't normally do that really, really, really helped this time. So take the time you need to make these things. Oh my goodness me. The waistband also has an interlining of a slightly thicker linen canvas, which just kind of helps it structurally because it has hooks and eyes for closing on it. And that extra thickness is useful so it doesn't tear through the fabric every time you engage the hooks and eyes. So yeah, follow the original examples because they knew what they were doing. They wore these things every day. I wear these things like 3 weekends a year. They made these to last, so make yours to last as well. Lesson learned, number 3. And that's pretty much it. That, at that point, is the breeches ready to be cut out and sewn in the proper outer fabric, and so I did. That's what I did. I cut out the wool, I sewed it all together, and yeah, Now for the pieced bits, so the crotch and the bum for the fork, I laid some tape over those seams, both to try and stop them being too bulky and just to kind of make them a little bit neater. And most of the sewing isn't the best in the world. I didn't always use proper tailoring techniques for my handwork, so apologies to people like Zach Pinsent who have taught me the best way of doing things. Zach, I'm really sorry, I was rushed and I was stressful. But basically this is just me putting both sides of the breeches together. And you don't have to do it with your fly buttons open whilst watching Game Grumps, but I find it really helps. And that's pretty much it. Then I did a test fitting, everything seemed to fit okay, but unfortunately, I can only assume due to wizard magic, all the footage has gone of this test fitting and I only have some stills. So the left is how the front looks, the right is how the back looks, and the middle is the breeches themselves. Now this is then without that lovely waistband on, but the waistband keeps it nice and snug. It is just about at my natural waist and it has this nice point down to the centre at the front, which I really like, and they fit like a dream. I put the knee bands on, the knee bands are just folded under and then caught into the fabric, and then I put some nice linen tape on at the knees, which tightens them nicely so that they stay exactly where they need to be. And then there's just the fine stuff, and to be honest, this is probably my favourite part of the project. I don't have to do any measuring, I don't have to do any cutting, I just have to make the smallest, neatest stitches possible to make it look as nice as I can. I find it quite therapeutic, and honestly, it was really nice to put some extra effort into a garment for myself. I normally try and get things rushed out as fast as possible, and I am a very impulsive, kind of short-tempered dude sometimes. You know, if I've been mean to you, I apologise. It was almost certainly unnecessary. Next time I see you, I'll shake you by the hand and buy you a pint, but you know, taking the time to sew these, in my underpants apparently, and just getting it right was a really nice change, and it was really worth it. So, yeah, this is what they look like. I hope you like them, and I hope that you've enjoyed this video. If you have, as ever, and you want to support the channel financially, we have the Ko-fi, we have the Patreon links in the description. Otherwise, like and subscribe, and unwaith eto, diolch yn fawr am wylio. Thank you very much for watching, and tan y tro nesa, till the next time, hwyl am y tro, bye bye for now.